What's up everybody? If you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're watching my talk channel. Got a guest in today's episode. We've got Max. He likes to sit in on my lap every once in a while. I needed to record this video and he just plopped right down, so you're gonna be a part of it, bud. But I am back at it again with another Q&A video. This is the second week in a row that I am releasing a Q&A video. If you like these types of videos, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. That's gonna be an indicator of whether or not I should record more of these. And if you have any questions that you want me to answer within one of these Q&A videos, make sure you list them down in the comment section below. Can't guarantee that I'll read your question off in an episode, but I'll certainly go down there and cherry pick the best ones that I think will be valuable for more than just one person. Okay, let's just get right into the questions. Do you empty the runoff or do you let the plants sit in the runoff? So it depends on if I'm growing with organic inputs or if I'm growing synthetically with bottled nutrients. If I'm growing with organic nutrients, what I'll do is I'll water, and then if there is a little bit of runoff, I'll let it soak up. Now, if I feel like I've accidentally overwatered, then maybe I'll get rid of it, but I try to avoid doing that at all costs. The reason why is because there's beneficial bacteria, fungi, organic matter in that runoff, so disposing of it is arguably waste. Now when I'm growing with synthetic nutrients, any runoff that I have, I like to do about 10 to 20% runoff. Now I've let it sit in there in the past and let it soaked up. Unfortunately, salt buildup can occur and it can ultimately lead to nutrient lockout. Plant can show deficiencies. So I'll water in until there's about 10 to 20% runoff. Then I use a shop vac to dispose of it. Explain your shirt, please. So I made sure to wear the shirt gram per watt with a big X on it. So for those of you who don't know what gram per watt is, it's basically a measurement that some growers use in order to determine for the watts that they're consuming, what is the yield they're getting. So if you're using a 100 watt grow light and you're getting 100 gram dry yield, that's 1 gram per watt. If you're going with a 300 watt grow light and you're getting 300 grams of yield, that's 1 gram per watt. If you're going with a 300 watt grow light and you're getting 600 grams of yield, that's 2 grams per watt. I've actually seen this measurement being used by lighting companies in order to try to sell their lights. That's the main reason why I am against this. It's well known that light isn't the only thing that determines yield. There are so many different factors that go into it, right? Environment's going to go into it. Nutrition, genetics is going to go into it, lighting. So there are several different things that is going to determine yield. For a lighting company to say that if you purchase this light, you're going to get 2 grams per watt, in my opinion, is misleading. I mean, you could get a high yielding strain, have a half decent light, and get a higher gram per watt. And saying that it's the light that's doing it, again, is just misleading your consumers in a sense. But it's not just that. Also, the calculation is can be somewhat confusing, right? What wattage do you actually use? If you're using 100 watts in the vegetation stage, seedling stage, vegetation stage, and you're slowly increasing that wattage into flowering, well, what wattage do you use? Do you use the veg wattage? Do you use the flower wattage? If the argument that you're using the flower wattage, well then you're not using that same wattage throughout the entire grow. So should you actually be using that flower wattage? Or should you be keeping track of the weeks that you're using 100 watts, the weeks that you're using 200 watts, 300 watts, etc., and then averaging that out? Because if you're using a lower wattage in veg and then you're using higher wattage in flower, and then you're just using that higher wattage as a calculation, you could be shooting yourself in the foot. Now don't get me wrong, I do believe that this can be used as a personal benchmark so you can measure kind of your own performance. If you're using the same grow setup, or if you're just changing one thing at a time and you want to measure your own performance, sure, you can do that. But there's so many variables that go into yield, like I had mentioned before. So yeah, if I see lighting companies that are advertising a gram per watt, claiming that their light is going to give them a certain gram per watt, I personally usually avoid companies that do that. Any recommendations on organic ferts for top dressing during veg and flower? There are so many different organic amendments that you can use. I personally use Earth Dust by the Green Sunshine Company, but there are several others out there. You've got Dr. Earth, you've got Down to Earth, Mr. B's Trees. There are several organic blends that can be used throughout the grow. And most of these organic blends, they'll come with a feeding chart or some sort of feeding instructions which tell you how to use them. Question of the day, I want to grow a bunch of, how would I do it? Well, that's a loaded question. If I was trying to maximize yield, growing indoors, I would grow in the largest room possible. I would make sure I have sufficient lighting that covers the entire area that I'm growing in. I'd make sure that the plants are getting the optimal amount of PAR, optimal amount of CO2, and I would chase after VPD. I would of course make sure that the plant is healthy throughout the entire grow, proper nutrition is certainly key. And then when growing the plant, I would do training in order to try to maximize that space as much as possible. So a trellis net is one of the ones that I would probably use. I would top the plants, do low stress training, and just make sure every square inch of that footprint is completely full in order to maximize yield. And then the last thing would be I would grow cultivars that are advertised as high yielders. Love the shirt. What happened to nvcmg? Haven't seen anything from him in months. So in the previous video that he commented on, I was wearing NV Closet Med Grow's shirt. And for those of you who follow him on YouTube know that he hasn't really posted much lately. He actually used to live in Las Vegas and we've hung out on a few occasions. But yeah, unfortunately he actually moved away. So he's in Colorado now, I believe. His content on YouTube was extremely valuable to me personally. I've just learned so much from him over the years, and his brain is like a sponge. He learns so much, he knows so much. And yeah, I definitely miss him. And I definitely hope he comes back to YouTube soon. What ppm of feed do you use for the different stages of growth? This is something I've actually listed in my book under the ppm section in the book. For those of you who don't know, I have a book specifically for beginners growing indoors in soil or coco coir. There is a section on ppm which has a chart. I'll put it on the screen right now so you can see what I'm looking at. But after sprout, vegetation, or seedling stages for the first week, 100 to 250 ppm is what I target. Vegetation weeks 2 to 3, 300 to 400 ppm is what I target. Veg weeks 4 and beyond, 450 to 700 ppm. Now, depending if it's larger plants, it can go higher than that. Flowers weeks 1 through 4, 750 to 950. Flowers weeks 5 plus, 1,000 to 1,600. Some phenos are going to be able to take more than that, and some phenos are going to be sensitive to that and not take as much as that. This is just kind of a general range that I go by. Certainly you can deviate from this. And by the way, this is taking measurements on a 500 scale TDS tester. And then you can see 2 weeks before harvest, less than a 100. This is if you believe in flushing. There's a lot of controversy behind flushing. A lot of new studies have come out on it. General range, you don't have to flush, but if you're going to flush, aim for around 100 ppm is just general guidance. At that point, you should see some fade on the leaves. And yeah, get those fall colors, bring those out. Can you use recharge and liquid cool bloom at the same time? Yeah, absolutely. So liquid cool bloom is an additive. So you'll use your base nutrients, and then this is an additive on top of it. And recharge is a microbial inoculant, so it has beneficial microbes. And also it actually has kelp and molasses in there as well. But yeah, you can absolutely use both of them. How many times can you reuse soil? Well, if you're growing organically, you can reuse soil infinite number of times. If you're not aware of how to do that, there are plenty of resources on the internet on reusing soil. Now, if you're using synthetic bottled nutrients, generally it's recommended to not reuse your soil. The reason why is because salt can build up. Unfortunately, that can lead to lockout issues. You have an imbalance of nutrients that can happen, and yeah, you can definitely get poor results. So I know a lot of my friends that use bottled nutrients, they'll just throw away their soil. And when I was using bottled nutrients, I was throwing away my soil. Pretty wasteful, but yeah, that's another positive of going organic is you can reuse your soil. Absolutely. What are the best tips to get really rock hard buds? Is it as much in the cure as it is growing? Is it just genetics? A combination of all, maybe? Yeah, so I definitely think it is a combination of all. So starting with genetics, right? Maybe look at people who are growing those genetics online, taking pictures of it. Does it look like a dense bud structure? There are definitely genetics out there that don't dense up, that are kind of naturally, I don't want to say airy, but definitely not a super dense bud structure. And then there are also plants that foxtail, it's just in their genetics. So definitely start with genetics, and then environment is going to be a huge factor in it as well. So, under the proper humidity levels, for example, if you're chasing after VPD, if you're trying to aim to achieve VPD through all levels of growth, you're going to get a better bud structure than if you were living in dry conditions. I live in the desert region. It's very dry conditions. I've grown plants in very dry conditions, 25% RH, 30% RH. I definitely think that has impacted the bud structure. So making sure your environment is dialed in, proper nutrition, that's another thing. So it's definitely a combination of things in order to get that rock hard bud structure. Can I ask you a question? I'm a first time grower and have 3 sprouts of Ultra Auto Power seedlings. They came out fast by day 2. They had popped and stretched a bit, but by day 5 they seem to have stalled. I just tested my soil pH and it's high at 7.5. Will that slow them down? And if so, how can I fix it? So first off, the first week that plant sprouts from the medium, that seedling stage, growth is going to appear very slow. So it might just be that plant establishing its root structure. You may not see rapid growth start to happen until weeks 2, 3, and beyond, when it has more leaves, it's able to intake more energy. Now, you mentioned your soil pH is high at 7.5. That could potentially be locking some nutrients out. So the next time around, you may just want to water in at a lower pH, maybe at like 6.2 to 6.5 pH, and it should naturally kind of drop down. But that's definitely a good question. I'm glad you asked it, because there have been multiple people who have hit me up in the past, and they're very concerned about that first week because they don't see much difference in growth. But just give it time, be patient, it'll grow. Can you explain plant stretch in detail? Yeah, sure. I'm not sure if you're talking about plant stretch while the plant is a seedling, or if you're talking about plant stretch during the first several weeks of flowering. I'll talk about both. So when a plant first pops its head from the medium, you could see it stretch. The most common reason why that happens is because the light is too far away. It's stretching up, reaching for that light. Now, it could very well also be the spectrum of light. So if it's high in red spectrum, it doesn't have a lot of blue in it, you will see longer internode spacing. So that might be a contributing factor. Now, talking about plant stretch, when we get into the flowering stage, once you change that light cycle over to 1212, for example, the flowering light cycle, the plant will continue to grow upwards. And that's what grows often referred to as the stretching phase. So depending on the cultivar you're growing, some plants could stretch 3 weeks, some could stretch 2 weeks. Some phenos are going to stretch more than others, right? So some cultivars, you might see a plant stretch barely. Other phenos you might see stretch to double its height it was when you flipped it to flower. Some phenos could be even more than that. So for example, I just grew out Square One Genetics. It was Tahoe G crossed with Banana Buttercups, and that stretched to 3 times the amount after flipping to flower. So genetics is going to be the main thing that determines how much that plant stretches, assuming that your environment's dialed in, nutrition's dialed in, so on and so forth. That's all the questions that I have for today. If you have a question that you want me to answer in a future episode, leave them down in the comment section below. And then one more thing before I end this video, giveaway. I'm going to continue to give away items in these episodes. For this one, I've got a t-shirt. Got the Green Sunshine Company t-shirt, their Electric Sky t-shirt. This is size medium. So if you're interested in getting this t-shirt, winning this t-shirt, I will leave a link to the giveaway down in the description section below. All you have to do is click on that link. It's not hosted by YouTube. It's not hosted on YouTube or anything like that. It's hosted on Rafflecopter. Once you click that link, you'll see the instructions on what you need to do in order to enter the giveaway. There's actually a few ways that you can enter. And I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, peace.